glad to be here. It's been a long journey, and let me just say I'm really nervous doing this kind of talk as well. I kind of give nerdy scientific talks, but you're going to hear me instead. So I just want to give you a bit of my story. So this is where it started. Like back in the late 80s, I was an engineer who was fixated on vision. I wanted to find ways to prevent blindness, particularly from diseases like glaucoma and diabetic retinopathy. So I approached this problem like any good engineer would. I investigated it, then I built something to fix it. In this case, understanding the problem meant being able to precisely measure pressures in the eye, which would then lead to understanding blood flow in the eye. Fixing it meant being able to precisely guide these homemade needles that we had into these incredibly tiny veins in the back of the eye so that we could build a technique to measure the pressure, and then we could actually use it to look at clots and to treat them in the back of the eye. So we built this robot that could insert a 2-micron needle into the back of the eye. Ophthalmologists wanted it, patients desperately needed it, and we struggled to get it into the operating room at some of the best institutions in this land. And I couldn't understand why. So out of frustration and the desire to understand the other side, I took, of course, the easy no-brainer route. I went to med school. I am Indian after all, come on. So unfortunately, that robot never made it into the operating room, and sadly, to this day, these issues still affect people. And why? What happened? So I realized as an engineer that I wanted to help the blind see. But then as a doctor, I realized that I could help the whole community, both patients and doctors, see much, much more. Any doctor would tell you that if they could take the time to see patients properly, if they could go through all their symptoms and family history, then they can get to about 70% of the diagnosis just by spending time with the patient. But unfortunately, there's no time to spend with patients. There's no time to run around getting all sorts of tests done. There's no time to investigate all the possible causes and correlation. There's no time for trial and error. There's no time for managing all the patient's emotions and beliefs. And most importantly, there's no time to get it wrong. So we can't create time. We can't slow it down. We can barely manage our own time. So how do we deal with this? Well, we make time smarter. And how do we do this? Well, we use a really complex, convoluted, highly sophisticated, emotionally labile technique with a ring of organization around it that we all learned in kindergarten. Show and tell. So show and tell is where a picture's worth 1,000 words, where anyone can see and understand what is happening. So after med school, I went into nuclear medicine. So as an engineer, I wanted to understand how this incredible body and all those incredible bodies work. And of course, I love the math. So the functional imaging associated with nuclear medicine allows me to see how the body works at cellular or even subcellular level. Almost in real time, because we are always changing. So beat by beat, blood is flowing through our blood vessels. Breath by breath, the air is whispering into our lungs. Birthday by birthday, we're getting older. And from the bones on the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, it's always changing. Nothing in your body is static, even when you die. We can talk about that later if you want at dinner, because there's some interesting changes that occur then. But for me, functional imaging was not enough, because I felt both form and function needed to go together. So I then went into radiology. So this engineer turned nuclear medicine physician, then turned radiologist, could not find a simple path to investigate the whole body and drive the change I wanted to see. So out of frustration of not seeing the change I wanted to see, I bought my own MRI machine in 2009. So then I partnered with Wayne Picker, you can see him in the corner there, who's a brilliant MRI technologist. And together, we unlocked the ability to look at the entire body with both form and function. And so this is us in Halloween. This was all treat, no trick, looking through all of these images to make sure they were calibrated and working properly. So we also developed images in such a way that any radiologist can understand and recognize them, just more comprehensive than anything they'd ever seen before. We also built a special functional MRI technique called diffusion-weighted imaging of the body that screens for hardness, considering most tumors are hard. It behaves and also looks like an FDG PET scan, because after all, I am a nuclear medicine physician as well. And so in Vancouver, we had this show and tell clinic. Early on, I showed my patients images of their body, and then they would tell me their symptoms. Over time, that reversed. I would tell them their symptoms, and then I would show them the reason why. And can you imagine the awe on those patients? To this day, I can still remember many of them jumping up and down in the hallway saying, oh my God, this doctor actually understands me. They actually listen, they can see it, and I can see it, and I understand it. It's amazing. So 5 years ago, a tech entrepreneur named Andrew came up from the Bay Area. He came to my clinic in Vancouver for one of these show and tell sessions. Blown away by the amount of information gained in a 1 hour long whole body MRI scan, he pushed us to consider making this more widely available. Well, Silicon Valley, tech, that's what we think about it. Scary words for us in the medical field, right? Well, these people want to move fast and break things. Well, we want to move fast and fix things. So for every for every person who comes to the door, we are the leader in clinical diagnostic quality whole body MRI. That is 1, fast, 2, safe with no radiation, 3, non-invasive. There's no contrast injection needed whatsoever because we combine both form and function. So a single Prenuvo scan assesses almost every system in the body, well, except for the heart, because there's fantastic technologies out there, like what we saw yesterday, that can evaluate the heart. So at Prenuvo, we can detect almost all solid tumors in stage 1. And it screens for more than 500 conditions, from benign cysts to silent killers like aneurysms. We capture more than 1 billion data points in under an hour of your entire body, not just a snapshot here and there. That's more than 10 times what a conventional MRI can cover in the same period of time. So how do we do this? Well, we have custom MRI hardware that's dedicated to whole body MRI imaging. And second, we have customized protocols that are calibrated to basically provide the diagnostic yield we need in 1 hour. And with all this overwhelming amount of information, how do we get through it all? Well, this is where artificial intelligence comes in. And this isn't your standard run-of-the-mill chatty AI or something like that, or something that you're going to use to do a college essay and then, or a marketing copy and change the words to make it seem like it's your own. No. AI is also not about computers chewing through thousands of data sets trying to get the information we want. But we actually kind of feel that AI, when done right, can become the real driver of critical change we need to flip our healthcare paradigm from reactive to proactive. But the kind of AI I'm talking about is one that I want everybody who's working in the field of MRI to consider. We call it empathic AI. When you walk into a physician's office, they're observing you. From the moment you arrive, they pay attention to the way you walk, the way you sit, to your body language, the tone of your voice, the way you present yourself. These factors, combined with your self-reported symptoms and a few target exams and questions, are used to form the best picture of your health. This is the complex nature of the decision-making process for us doctors, and this complexity is growing day by day. So when we think about AI in the context of medicine, it's critical to remember that this is not just about big data trying different architectures of convolutional neural networks. It's a field of decision-making that requires a nuanced and complex approach. It took me this 30-year journey from wanting to prevent blindness to understanding this simple, basic truth. If we make every decision from the eyes of a patient, we'll make the right decision. Keep that in mind, because one day, we'll all be patients. The shortest way to make a positive change in our field is to put ourselves in the shoes of patients. And that kind of patient-centered design is at the original, simple cornerstone of Prenuvo. And it's in the continued evolution of Prenuvo. Our old robot never saw a day in the operating room, despite both doctors and patients desperately wanting the change for good it would bring. Change is coming to the current reactive medical paradigm. That's why we're all here. We've seen it over the past few days. But especially when you see it through the world and the eyes of early detection. 600,000 people die every year from cancer. More than half of these are detected late, typically in stage 3 or higher, typically when the tumor has spread beyond the organ of origin. About half of us in this room, take your pick, because you don't get a choice, out there will be affected by cancer in our lifetime. Why is that so? What are we doing so wrong? But first, let me be clear. In healthcare, there are statistics, but there are, more importantly, people. An N of 1 does not fit on any statistical table. But the simplistic answer is that our healthcare system, despite all the amazing impact we're having every day, despite all of us medical professionals here truly upholding our Hippocratic oath, our system is built on 1, reactivity. We diagnose symptoms when they appear. 2, escalation of diagnostics. We're systematically slow to react. And 3, silentness. It's incredibly difficult to get, at any point in time, a picture of your entire body. Instead, you get your nose examined here, you get your chest examined there, and your pelvis goes over there somewhere. But our bodies are all connected. So can anyone guess what these two numbers mean? Or what they may represent? 10% is a 5-year survival rate for pancreatic cancer patients. By the time pancreatic cancer symptoms appear, it's already too late. 89% is a 5-year survival for breast cancer patients. What's the big difference here? 2 words: early detection. Thanks to mammograms becoming an accepted part of women's health care, breast cancer, while incredibly challenging, is no longer a death sentence. But that took a long, long time to achieve. Here you can actually see mammograms, and then there you can see technology, how it's advancing. I mean, we put a man on the moon and a man in a space station faster than we got mammograms approved by insurance. What race do we care about, the tech race or the human race? Change is slow in our system. That's why we're working so hard to do something about it. What stage can we detect pancreatic cancer with our whole body Prenuvo scan? Stage 1. That stage is not a death sentence. That is a call to action. That is a significant reduction in healthcare expenses that usually follows a late diagnosis. That is an emotional gift to patients and their loved ones. That is hope for life, a good life. In fact, at Prenuvo, 1 out of every 20 patients we've had last year received a life-saving diagnosis. It's not rare for us to hear back from those patients that their doctors tell them, had you come in a year from now, we'd be having a very different conversation. MRI is the pinnacle of medical imaging, but it's entirely qualitative. We needed to bring quantitative reproducibility to the field of MRI. Pairing MRI with AI gets us to this equation where 1 + 1 is equal to way, way more than 2. And when you realize what empathic AI can do, it's very tempting to go after extracting as much information as possible from whole body MRI to make radiologists like myself into super radiologists. But it took me meeting Sam Hashemi, who's here, by the way. He's the good-looking guy with glasses and beard. I'm just the guy with glasses. But he'll be giving a session later this afternoon on AI. But it took Sam and me about 4 years to realize how to actually get AI to work properly for us. We spent thousands of hours going through de-identified MRI scans together, searching for the most effective ways AI can contribute real impact in radiology. So adopting a patient-centric approach, we both understand that we need to be smart about where technology can actually be useful, how algorithms can meet intuition, how engineering can meet needs, and it's not about the features, but about the impact. I see this empathic AI advancing preventative screening in three main areas. First, AI has the potential to revolutionize healthcare by making imaging, this insight into our bodies, more quantitative and accurate, leading to earlier diagnoses with more successful interventions. Heavily investing in AI and seeing it as a complementary tool will accelerate both scanning and diagnoses. We radiologists, we're used to taking a ruler and approximating organ volumes and other regions of interest and interpreting them based on our knowledge and experience. Today, by the time I look at images, I increasingly have exact measurements, labels, and patterns already on my screen. This helps me provide more accurate, reproducible readings in a faster way, and for patients, this gives quantitative measurements that they can understand without spending years in medical school. And if you recall from the opening lecture by Dr. Kraft, there's still fax machines. There's still DVDs. Well, at Prenuvo, you get everything on an app in your pocket. And don't forget, you can pinch and zoom those images because it's one of the common criticisms that, oh, did you guys scan like dwarfs? No, you have to zoom. Surprisingly, that's a complex feature for a lot of doctors. Believe it or not. Second, AI enables us to establish a baseline of our body, and more importantly, through regular routines of scans, most people every 1 or 2 years, just like mammography, based on your risk factor. Empathic AI will usher in an incredibly precise longitudinal view of how every part of our body is changing over time. And this is critical for proactive care. Measuring these subtle changes without quantification is simply not possible. So here's what you would get: a typical lumbar spine MRI. So this is me. And you can see at the bottom, at the lumbar spine connected to the sacrum, there's edema, slight loss of disc height. And that's typically associated with degeneration. But if we zoom out, we can see the entire picture of my whole spine. In fact, let's zoom out even further. Let's go 4D. Here's a decade of my spine, and you'll see those degeneration changes have reversed. So one of the other things you'll see is that there's more curvature happening in my spine in 2022. It's because I sit too much, don't stand enough. And this is where the real magic of AI comes in. We can actually go and measure the change in my lumbar curvature from 24 degrees to 34 degrees over a decade. And we know that as we all get older, things start to get a little bit more hunched over. So with empathic AI, we can quantify these subtle changes that have been developing slowly over a decade. They're too subtle for our eyes to see. But you know, when you see somebody over a long period of time, the changes are obvious. When you see them quickly or every day, it's not as obvious. So here's another person who actually started to exercise and eat right, and actually her spine improved, as well as the amount of fat decreased throughout her body and the muscle mass increased. And this is Linda, who is the epitome of patient care. And this is not fiction, this is a real fact. So why are we all surprised? Well, that's because we've never had the ability to look at this before. We've never engineered such systems to look at the whole body on a regular basis. And remember, there's no radiation, so you could do this every day. Last week I had a headache, stressed about this, so I scanned myself, because I can. Third and finally, AI enables us to analyze and research trillions of data points from large populations, applying that knowledge from millions of scans to the benefit of each and every patient and providing it to their family doctor. This is how we can track visceral fat in the whole body, which can help prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes, and seeing is believing that you're getting fat on the inside. This is how we can assess decreased muscle mass, which leads to increased frailty, where the risk of breaking a bone like the hip could be fatal. But don't worry, on the flip side, increased muscle mass is one of the greatest predictors of longevity. So we talked about silentness in healthcare, but now that we have this holistic picture, we can connect the dots and understand cross-organ correlations and relationships that weren't obvious before. For example, the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, or NHANES data on osteoporosis years ago, has shown that bone mineral density decreases at a rate of about 3% per decade in postmenopausal females. With our data, we've shown the same rate of decrease in brain volumes with aging. and we'll be presenting these findings at the American Academy of Neurology meeting later this spring in Boston. Other exciting breakthroughs we've confirmed include correlations between brain volumes and lifestyle factors such as visceral fat, smoking, and activity levels. This will likely provide practical insights into the prevention of diseases like mild cognitive impairment, which can lead to Alzheimer's. Because study after study has shown that diet and activity can dramatically delay the onset of Alzheimer's or even reverse mild cognitive impairment. But this is only the beginning. The future is early detection, not only for cancer, but early detection for subtle changes in muscle mass, deadly visceral fat, brain atrophy before it's too late. These body changes are currently ignored, but with empathic AI, they can be as simple as measuring your body's weight on a bathroom scale. So imagine a world where at any time we can know the specific age and monitor the rate of every organ's changing in our body as we age. What should be normal? Imagine a world where every family doctor can use the 10 minutes they have with their patient to directly jump into discussing the biggest real issues and opportunities to improve their patient's health span and their lifespan. Imagine a world where not just doctors, but also governments, corporations, institutions, and dare I say insurers are all making every decision from the eyes of a patient. Imagine a world where we never, ever have to say, we caught it too late again. Let's do this because we can and because we need to. Thank you.
Let's step over here. Fantastic work. I know at least one member of our NextMed Health community who had a Prenuvo scan and picked up an early malignancy and definitely saved his life. So thank you for that work and many others that have been caught early. I love the vision of where this is heading. Often the critique might be this is not yet democratized, it's expensive. Where do you see this heading in that regard?
No, exactly. I think as technology advances, and if you kind of look at, for example, what Tesla's done to the automobile, the same thing is going to come to the field of MRI. Fortunately, there's a lot of companies that are working on that. The vendors are actually now paying attention to it. And this is actually going to get faster and faster. I think Dr. Snyder said it yesterday, probably 15 minutes. I beg to differ. I think we can get it under 10, but particularly with this degree of diagnostics. But the key is we actually have to have AI working in parallel because people like myself, we're 14 years in the making. We need to actually make radiologists faster and more efficient and be able to have increased throughput. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be under 10 minutes. It'll get therefore much, much cheaper. And so probably in the $300 to $400 level. So we'll be as comparable to mammography.
Mm-hmm. So a decade from now, I'll go to my Walgreens, Walmart, Minute Clinic, CVS, and get scanned?
Possibly. I think actually the doctor's office of the future will basically be centered with imaging, blood testing, and then doctors actually helping people. And with that kind of core, we can actually start to put that in mobile units and actually transport it almost anywhere. And it's not just going to be for these countries. I actually kind of think the developed world may be a little bit too far gone. Whereas the developing world will actually kind of look at how do we do a better form, and a better form of healthcare. Right? We all know our systems are broken, not both in Canada and the United States. The governments are struggling. They don't know what to do. Patients are caught in the middle. This is the great equalizer.
Including equalizing, you mentioned you have a mechanism now to let folks get through Prenuvo who may not otherwise have access?
Well, that's one of the things I'm hoping to do is actually set up a fund for people, particularly mothers, to get a scan, those who can't afford it.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for great work at Prenuvo and beyond. Cheers.
Thanks.